About 25 years ago, when I started doing community systems trainings in schools, it was very common that educators who were learning the principles were very excited to move forward. And the first thing often on their mind was, what tools and resources can I have to teach? And I'm reminded of two teachers that were very much on opposite sides of the spectrum, and that's probably representative. There was a union president, a fifth grade classroom teacher by the name of Barb Gort. And Barb was a fireball. When Barb spoke, we listened. She had had the first introductory days of training, and she spoke up very powerfully. And she said, I don't want to go through this process unless you give me the opportunity to learn and live these principles that you're talking about. She was very wise. She was very firm. And luckily at that time, we had planned a very long, multiple year process of bringing the principles to that community so her wish could be met. She also adamantly said, and then I want curriculum for my fifth grade students. And I thought, oh no, that's a problem because we don't really have the kind of commercially produced curriculum that she's talking about. But I didn't say that at that moment. The next teacher was equally strong in a different way. Her name was Judy Faust, and she ended up at the end of just the introductory training speaking equally adamantly, and she says, I get it. I want you to just give me the curriculum, and I'll go in and start teaching this on Monday. And again, I kind of tempered my response because there's a fine line between learning and living the principles and having materials in your hand that you can take to students. So I'm delighted today that we have Krista Campsall ready to do the official orientation to a newly published curriculum for grades 4 through 7 elementary students. This is called My Guide Inside. She and Jane Tucker have labored for the last several months to put this together. Krista, welcome to this webinar. Help us out, introduce us to the resources we finally can count on. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity, and Brett for putting it all together, Kathy for hosting, and also I really appreciate the participants being here live. It's going to make it just that much better. Little trouble with internet connection. Let's hope that stabilizes. I have a bit of an outline for this morning, and just want to say in a nutshell what I would like to share with any teacher who's interested in using My Guide Inside for curriculum is really that it's about being a learner and student of truth ourselves. For me, it was really about going in every day, feeling I'm at square one, and in that way, what you see is what you get, and in that way, you're able to see the wholeness of a child and the beauty that's within a child, despite what's going on with their behavior and so on. Also, when we come in with that feeling that ranges from joy, love, to sometimes compassion as needed, that feeling really draws students to us, and there's a sense of trust. Better. The last thing I want to say is that in all my years of working, it's very clear that the smallest change in a child who's been struggling significantly, perhaps his whole his or her whole life, is the smallest change is so significant. And the smallest change is really an indicator that the child is headed in a new direction. And that's what it's all about, is heading in that positive, healthy direction. So that's, in a nutshell, that's what I'd like to share with teachers. I do have, being a teacher, I do have a bit of an outline for this morning. And we'll go through the front matter of the teacher's edition. I'll just highlight certain points. Some of these pages, Kathy has turned into a PDF and put on the forum, which is great. And then I will go through a sample lesson. I picked one of the shorter stories. And then we will open it up for comments and questions. I'd really like to call on my friend and colleague Barb Oss to speak a little bit about the material and also about her book, which really supports the culture that the My Guidance Side points to. And then we'll end it with, we have a permission to use a really beautiful clip of Sid's, which is not even 3 minutes long, but very powerful and wonderful. So that's how the morning will go. So in the forum, we did, like I say, we did do a few handouts. And the first one is about the table of contents, and it shows what's in the teacher's edition. And it also shows the contents for the learner book. And what Jane and I did was put the learner book inside the teacher's edition. And so it's fully there, the page numbers match, and just to make it really convenient for people. So the table of contents are there. The first page is page T1 in the teacher's manual is acknowledgements. That's where we wanted to start. The first acknowledgement is to our mentor and also a very dear friend, the late Sydney Banks. Now, he had an experience, a profound experience in 1973 that really changed him from an ordinary working man who was living his life with his family. And he had this profound experience which revealed the 3 principles of mind, consciousness, and thought to him. And from that experience on, throughout his entire life, he was devoted and dedicated to sharing these principles, knowing that getting even a glimmer of these principles would really help humanity, help every single person. So we were so privileged to learn from him. And Jane and I were talking the other day about how, what good fortune we had to know about Sid and go and hear him and learn from him way back in 1975 for me. The thing about Sid, I got to know him very well when we lived on Salt Spring Island together. We were friends and neighbors from 1990 on, and of course we knew him back in the 70s. But he, I was teaching at the time, and he had children and grandchildren and was very interested in helping the children of the world and bringing hope to the teachers. Sid really appreciated, he would always say school teachers. He always appreciated the work of school teachers, knowing that we have a huge responsibility and that it can be very difficult when children are struggling and acting out. So he had a great hope and desire to help teachers and to help children. And we have a video clip that I was really grateful to get permission to use, and it's called The Three Principles. It's just a few minutes long, and Brett is going to play it for us now. This was recorded at a talk in Washington, D.C. called the Washington Lectures, which are available, and we'll get to how you get those, how you can access those in a little bit. So Brett, if you could play the Three Principles video right now.
It's nothing new. It's something that's been on this reality since the beginning of time. It's called truth. And truth is a spiritual intelligence before the formation of this reality we know. And how do you get to this truth? How does it become alive? And it's really very simple. There's three principles that bring everything into creation, and that is divine mind, divine consciousness, and divine thought. And with mind, consciousness, and thought to guide you through life, you learn to use them properly. Now, you don't really have to think about mind, because mind is the intelligence of all things. You've already got it. Consciousness makes you aware. You're already aware. So what's left is thought. And thought is like the rudder of a ship. It guides you through life. And if you can learn to use that rudder properly, you can guide your way through life way, way better than you ever imagined. You can go from one reality to another. You can find your happiness. And when illusionary sadness comes from memories, you don't try and figure them out. Please don't try and do that. You'll get yourself in trouble. All you have to do is simplicity again, is realize that it's thought. The second you realize it's thought, it's gone. You're back to the now, you're back to happiness. So don't get caught up in a lot of details. In this world, the smaller it is, the more powerful it is. And here we have mind, consciousness, and thought. That's very simple. That's the answer.
I love how the feeling that Sid speaks with, having had that profound experience, the feeling really brings it alive. I know for many of us, we'd heard these words before, but it's the feeling really that makes Sid's talks really peerless and beloved by so many. So we're also indebted to the late Jeffrey Tim. I was invited to come to Tampa, Florida in 1990. Elsie Spittle, Chip and Jan Chipman invited me and my husband Bob to come to Florida. And I met Jeffrey Tim there. He was very interested in sharing the principles with teenagers. He worked as a counselor in various schools. And he was given a grant by, I believe it was the Rotary Club of Tampa, to write a curriculum for youth. And I met him and we got on very well because we had the same vision of sharing principles with youth. And not long after he started, he invited me to co-author that. And I really loved that experience. And we used that curriculum. It was called Self-Esteem is for Everyone. We used that far and wide, not just us. Many people went to our little bit of a training intro with that and used these materials. Jeff used them, I used them, Jane used them. They were really wonderful materials. And from that, I wrote some other things for younger children, as did Jane Tucker, the co-author. So we were really inspired by Jeff's first curriculum. Also in our acknowledgements is Kathy. And really, it's because of Kathy that we really dusted off our old stories and had another look. And in Kathy's, on Kathy's website, I read, teachers who understand the principles have a truly awesome opportunity to create globally significant K-12 principles curriculum. And we write, with this encouragement to update and reintroduce earlier curricula, my guide inside was created. We are grateful to Kathy for this vision, inspiration, and guidance along the way. So really, it's so fun how we really are a big team, even though we don't meet face to face, but people who are interested in helping children through sharing the knowledge of the three principles. It's a labor of love to get together and put out our very, very best and have it go out far and wide so that children really get some of this knowledge within the regular school day. I truly, having been a teacher and a special ed teacher, I truly appreciate the special programs and all the service providers that we have that come into schools. My particular dream, being a classroom teacher, is that children and youth get this information within the regular course of a day, that it's there for everyone. So those are our acknowledgements. On page T3, I do an introduction letter to teachers. And the real point of this introduction letter is to say that it's beyond a desire to do well. You really have to have something for yourself to share with children. I know my story is that I was halfway through university and really doubting my choice of being a teacher, because even with my great skill set from a really good university in Vancouver and my strong desire to help, especially those learners who were struggling, I wasn't being successful. And then when I found something for myself through listening to the knowledge that Sid shared, all of a sudden it became my specialty, if you will, throughout really analyzing or trying to do that. All of a sudden my mind cleared enough to be able to help a child in the moment. And it was from those early experiences as a student teacher that I realized, wow, I'm onto something. If I can help children who are struggling, I really think I could do a good job as a teacher. And I, of course, carried on and worked for many years, many decades as a teacher. Yes?
I'd like to just add a comment here, because you talked about beginning to discover you really had something to offer to children. And one of the things that has been very clear for me when I've been able to watch teachers who have learned the principles and they're desiring, as you did, to share them, many classroom teachers have created their own version of a curriculum, and at great expense of their private time, with a lot of effort, and it's been hard to get that kind of work done. In fact, I was just speaking to someone yesterday who's been doing this now almost for 20 years. And she talked about how in the very beginning, she actually took a course, an independent study course, so she could spend her time creating curriculum that she would use in her class. But my point is that all of these individuals that I know of have not been able to take it to the point of publishing the curriculum so others can have easy access. And I think that's really what brings us to this point where you're ready to offer an overview of the curriculum. So at the end of this webinar, people who want to can take it and use it. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, as time marches on, it was time to retire, and it's only because I retired exactly a year ago that the time and space opened up to be able to do this. And then I invited Jane to hop on board with me, and I was so grateful that she did. It really does take, we all love it, and it's a passion to get into the work, but it does take a tremendous amount of time. So it's only because I was able to only because I retired that I was able to take this on. And then, like I say on your website, I saw, there really is a call for this. You know how teachers, we often talk about how we're a little bit isolated in our own classrooms, and then compound that with I'm on a little island. So you really, it's wonderful how through the internet we get to know what it is people are needing. So
kind of laugh as I sit here and watch the screen of faces, because there are some who are just nodding their heads and smiling because they've been through that arduous process.
Yes.
Here because of what you just said. You know, had you not retired, you might not have pulled this together either. So,
and at the other end, when Jeff invited me to co-author, I didn't have a continuing contract yet. So same thing. It was because I had that time and space. So it really does. And it's a bit of a trick. You want to have a up-to-date skill set, yet you have to kind of set it aside to be able to do this. The last point in the introduction letter to teachers is how this information in my guidance side is so valuable for everyone, but of particular note, if there are children who are struggling, they may have difficulty at home with their parents. They may not understand life. They may have difficulty with society. They may be bumping up against problems and trouble all day long. Of particular note, this material is so valuable for these individuals that are headed down a path of almost of self-destruction. And once they find that feeling within themselves and have just a sense of the knowledge they can access, it's tremendous, and it's so powerful to see how that can turn a life around and they never look back. And we have the good fortune of running into kids that we've worked with some 20 years ago, and to see how their life is still healthy and is still positive. So it's very, very powerful, particularly for children who are struggling. In the middle of my teaching career, in order to secure employment, I did a diploma in special education through University of British Columbia, and I learned so much from that, and it really opened the door for me to work in special education, which I really loved. Also, added to that, I did a Master of Arts in leadership and training. And it's really, I was reflecting on this with my husband, that it's really through writing my own thesis that I was really able to know how to do this curriculum in such a way that it would be meaningful for teachers to show to their principal or superintendent and show how this material really does tie in with our broader objectives and our desire to develop competencies. I am here in Canada. I did my best to be inclusive of what is happening in the States. And again, with the internet, it's so fabulous. You can really look and see what is it that school districts and schools are wanting. So I just want to say that it was a labor of love to really connect this meaningfully to the objectives and competencies that we are responsible for. The number one thing about this curriculum for the teachers is to be flexible. We really want you to, I put it together, and of course Jane and I are working together on this. I put it together in a way that made sense to me. And the stories, we think are meaningful and they mean something to us. However, if you have your own stories, if you want to do just one of the stories or you have a different order, please run with that. This is just really a framework, and whatever comes from your feeling and from your wisdom will have tremendous power and be tremendously effective. So we want people to really be flexible with this and use the material as they see fit. If I was to ask a question of all of us here, have you ever felt a moment of joy or love or compassion when you're working with children and youth? I'm sure we would all say yes. And it's that feeling that really is the essence of being successful in using this material. That is what, as Sid was saying on that little video clip we just heard, it's about bringing it alive. And your feeling of love and joy and compassion is what will bring this material alive for you and your students. And I say you and your students because I find I always, as I'm sharing these materials, I'm learning things for myself as well. We're all on a learning journey.
Krista, as you talk about the importance of the educator coming from the feeling of joy and love as being prerequisite to doing the curriculum or using this material successfully, I think that's terribly important. Because what we're talking about is a changed school environment.
Yes.
When you have masses of teachers doing this, and when someone goes to propose that this curriculum be adopted in their building or their system, that's an important talking point, because you're talking about having staff members be in a healthy place.
Yes.
And I'm thinking strategically right now about a particular large district where there's a great deal of challenge in the environment, all kinds of things. And if we begin to say the bedrock is that life that the teacher is living and the understanding they have of how that can either go in the direction of love and joy transmitted to the children and colleagues, or it can go in the direction of being focused on just the academic content, devoid of all of the other aspects that are so important. It's a critical decision, and it's a wonderful invitation for districts to think that it's possible. I'm very aware of what's going on in the world today, as we all are, and how often we see that we need to be people together in the globe. We need love, we need joy, we need to honor differences. And what I'm hearing you say with this curriculum is be flexible, but don't be flexible about your own living of the principles. That's a prerequisite.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could, toss the curriculum over your left shoulder for good luck and just use your own well-being and knowledge about and love and understanding, and it would have the same effect. In fact, we've done that. We've worked with children without a curriculum and had when we see amazing results that just make you want to cry. It's so heartwarming. So absolutely crucial. And not to get down on ourselves. Moods and states of mind come and go. It's just, if I found just to make my life easier, I'd like to be a student of truth and have the bigger picture in mind. And through focusing on the bigger picture, I get very customized bits of wisdom that help me with my issues that I would be having in the classroom, things I needed to solve. But it's a very easy habit to develop because it's so effective to go to that big picture, to feel that that the knowledge and the love is really at the core of life, and from that find our solutions.
You're talking about teaching from wisdom.
Teaching from wisdom.
Being in the moment, to be aware. And I'm reminded of a conversation just yesterday with another very seasoned teacher who was telling stories of what she did with both individual kids and groups of kids, things that popped into her head that she has learned to pay attention to.
Beautiful.
And that requires an understanding of how the principles operate, who they apply to or describe is probably better. We are the principles. So
Yes.
Continue to introduce the curriculum.
Yes. Just, the quiet mind comes to mind. When we have a quiet mind, we can see what to say and do in the classroom. We are meeting English language arts objectives in reading and writing. I am a reading specialist, and think it's so important that, the basics, reading, writing, and math, that we really help children gain those skills that are kind of the foundation of working in the world and managing our own affairs. Also, we have, it goes by different names, as I know it does in all jurisdictions, but generally I tried to keep it general. Health and career objectives regarding decision-making and relationships. This material can help with that. Meeting Indigenous learning objectives. That's important to us as well. And I'm so pleased that 2 of the 6 stories are based on First Peoples stories. And they're really 2 of the best stories in the book. So we look at Indigenous people's principles of learning. I'll just list them. They're so powerful, so beautiful. Truth, love, honesty, humility, courage, and wisdom are seen as gifts given to us. And we really, when you read the curriculum, you'll see that those gifts are tied into what we're saying. Also, social emotional learning. When I did my thesis on the 3 principles in 2005, 2006, that was the best literature at the time, was about social emotional learning, about self-awareness, self-management, healthy relationships. Social responsibility is very big in our jurisdiction, and we have a beautiful phrase that has come out of that work, and that is solving problems peacefully, and we teach and look for children to do that. Also, responsible decision-making is an important part. Now, I've tweaked these competencies in such a way that I feel it honors the knowledge of the 3 principles. For example, I'll just do one. Responsible decision-making. Learners make respectful choices about which thoughts to act on based on the well-being of self and others. And that is so powerful when children see how to do that. And it's done in such a way, all of this is done in such a way so it's not heavy, it's not serious, it's light and it's natural and it's lighthearted and it's heartwarming. So those are the objectives and competencies in a nutshell. Of course, they're spelled out in the teacher's manual. I'm going to move on to I'm jumping a little bit so that I can do the lesson plan at the end. I've included assessments, pre and post observation assessments. These are really just updated. These are what I used for my master's thesis on the 3 principles and teaching youth about them. And they're, you know, it's, oh, I should mention at this point, I found a copyright guideline that allows, that I just love, that it allows teachers to freely photocopy 10% of the book. And so, for example, you could, you know, for nonprofit, it goes on to say for nonprofit schools and so on, for use for yourself and for your learners. So you could photocopy the pre and post observation assessment scale, and very quickly, I'm a teacher, I know we need things really efficient because we can't spend too much time on that. The time we want is with the people. So there's a pre and post assessment scale there that could be used for your own purposes, for purposes of sharing with the children, to show them how far they've come and to celebrate that, to show perhaps any administrators that you might say, look at these changes, I would really love to buy a class set of these or whatever, to show parents the pre and post. So that's all in one page, very easy to rate and tick on each child. After that, yes?
At the bottom of that page, it's T21 in the teacher edition. You have what I think is a very significant brief piece called Snapshot. And there you're doing a quick rating of, let's say, progress in school attendance, academic performance, social behavior, and participation in class. Those are the most fundamental measures, maybe, of whether a student is moving forward, especially those who have a history of being sent to the office, booted out of school, you know, those kinds of things. That kind of data, if kept cumulatively for all of the students that you're teaching, has the power to influence administrative decisions over the long run.
Absolutely. And it gets to the point where the kids, it's especially noticed in the ones that weren't successful, and they're coming to school sick because they want to be there. We're like, gee, should you stay home? Should you be in bed? No, I want to be here. Sniffle, sniffle, achoo. It's really powerful. And what I love about, again, I'm a teacher. I need to be efficient and get the most bang for my buck. What I love about this knowledge is that students, myself included, we find something for ourselves and it changes how we see the world. So like you say, Kathy, it's all these aspects of your academic career. It's also going to affect how you relate to your siblings and your parents and to your boss if you're a young person who has a part-time job. It affects how you relate to the world. It's so beautiful. I've also included evaluation rating scales for the activity, so it's very easy. Every single activity has a little, again, very easy to do, a little evaluation scale. For example, poem reciting criteria. The student is prepared, the retelling is accurate, the student speaks clearly and is confident, and you can rate that and use this information for report cards, which we all have to write. Now, jumping around just slightly. Oh, a little bit of show and tell. Don't we all love that? On page T25, we have included the recommended source materials by Sydney Banks. Clearly, my guidance side is inspired by the works of Sydney Banks. You will see in the references that I have really used Dear Liza for most of the quotes. This is a book that he wrote for children, and is really a beautiful book. Also, a friend pointed out, Dear Liza is a fabulous book for couples relationships. You see the relationships of the major and his wife totally changed through meeting this little orphan girl, Liza. It's really beautiful. But I've given away all my new second chances. This is one of the originals with an actual watercolor painting. Second Chance is my favorite book to give graduates. And the sequel is In Quest of the Pearl. I also there's a beautiful audio recording of this by a Hawaiian actor who's reading Second Chance. I used that audio recording when I worked as a summer school teacher in Hawaii. It was very powerful. The children listened to the audio. I gave them beautiful pens and papers so they could do artwork while they listened. And I think it really did the heavy lifting for me. Those children changed just by fact of listening to this. And then, of course, we did reading and writing activities related to it. But listening to this was so powerful for those teens. The Enlightened Gardener is a favorite one. Sometimes I give this to parents that I see are troubled. I've used it as a one-to-one novel study with more senior students. The lad was probably 16 years old. We would read a little bit, we would discuss, he would write a reflection journal. It was very powerful to see in front of my eyes how his beliefs that he got from who knows where, they would just change in an instant when he was presented with some real knowledge. Because that's what it is about being a youth. You think this, somebody shows you something that's really rings true, and you instantly adopt it into, this is part of my life. This is now part of how I see life. The Missing Link, I love this book. It's poetry, it's short captions. I would give this book, mind you, I'm doing this all very, very quietly. No one really knew I was doing this. But if someone is particularly troubled, I would give them this, knowing that they probably couldn't handle reading The Enlightened Gardener, which is more novel style. And they could just read a little bit before going to bed and get a good feeling. Also, being a special ed teacher, I didn't do that much direct service anymore. Certainly didn't have a full classroom of kids all day. And to be able to just pick a little caption out of there and discuss it with a student with special needs and help them see how to get past what issues they were having.
Krista, as you talk about the materials of Sid Banks, I kind of want to underscore your statement that you did this very quietly.
Absolutely.
You were sharing one-on-one with students where it was appropriate for any number of reasons. And I think in my experience, there has been a wide range of, I think I want to say, comfort with educators and how they could use those materials in the classroom or with parents. And I think the simple thing is to remember, your statement about flexibility and the importance of the educator's own understanding, their living experience of the principles. And there really is no end to learning, especially if you keep returning to some of these books. You'll end up seeing things that you swear weren't there.
Exactly.
On reading the first time around. Like anything, we see what we relate to, and then we come back later and we're different. So I like the fact that you say you did this quietly, and how amazing it gets to be when it can be done, for example, with all administrative staff. We have to be very wise in planning that, but you're pointing to something very, very important, and it's on a continuum of readiness for the educator. Mm-hmm.
My last 10 years was special ed at our high school, and it was really about living what I knew. And that's how I would be able to relate to my colleagues and the students and the families. That's the lion's share of it. Every once in a while, there's this golden moment where you share the materials directly. But basically, it's about living what you know. Absolutely. Dear Liza was published the last year I actually taught English, and I loved it. I used it for English 9. I made up my own novel study for it. We finished it right around Christmas, which the story ends right around Christmas. And it was really powerful. And the last time I used this was as a special ed teacher. There was a young lad who really hadn't been in class ever, really, as far as just being a regular student and doing the reading and writing and so on. And so before I had him work with someone else, I did one-to-one. I did Dear Liza with him, just so I could see where his thinking was at, what level of his skills and so on. And this kid was like, I think, 14, 15. And it really delighted me how he'd be like, okay, he'd come in and he'd be like, okay, well, I got to leave at 12:20. I can't be any later than that. I got to meet this and that and that. And I'm like, yeah, that's fine. And then at 12:20, I'm like in the middle of something, and he's like, and I'm like, oh, okay, it's 12:20, I guess. No, keep going, keep going. And it was so delightful how the drama in this book really caught him. And he's like, I need to know what's going to happen. So love that book. And then the last one that I haven't really shared so much at work. It's called The Enlightened Gardener Revisited. I don't know if you can tell. It's missing its cover. It's quite stained. It's been, it's had seawater splashed on it. Lots of dog-eared pages. This is the one I just love. We're on an island, and so when we go off island, we have a lot of travel time. It was always in my weekend bag. It was always in my beach bag. I just love this for me. The Enlightened Gardener Revisited. Mm-hmm. Now, those are the source books, and then it lists the CDs and DVDs in our book as well. Just a little bit more about this, and then we'll move on to a lesson plan and questions or comments. This, what I'm holding, is a CD called The Long Beach Lectures. This is the third one, called The Experience, where Sid talks about his experience. Barb Austin and I created a workshop last year, and it was well attended. We were so pleased. It was really fun, especially the sharing we did in the afternoon. It was, of course, based on the 3 principles. And we realized that it's very difficult for people to get together geographically. very expensive. It's difficult for us to go to the city. It's difficult for the city folks to come here. And then we've got people that we love in the States and so on. So Barb had this idea to do something that could be shared online. So we created something called The Power of the Three Principles in Schools. And what we did a little introduction. It's maybe 15 minutes of us talking about how these principles apply in our work. And then we connect you. It's very slick, very easy to do on Barb Oss' website and on my website. Then you just click over right from the website and you end up listening to one of Sid's Long Beach lectures. And that's our professional development package. There are 4 parts to this, so of course we do 4 parts. And then at the end of each section, there is an opportunity to either on your own or with your school group to do a reflection, a kind of an appreciative inquiry, and so that it's a proper Pro-D series. So we're really pleased about that. And it's all there for free. Oh, and thanks to 3PGC for putting the Long Beach lectures on their website. It's free. So that's really a big bonus to be able to access these materials. Sometimes it's not about the money, it's about being able to access them. So they certainly can be purchased, but they can also be enjoyed for free. Last one, and then we'll do a lesson plan. This is brand new. It's called Genesis of the Three Principles. This is amazing. It's Elsie Spittle and Chip Chipman. It says, "We're longtime students and dear friends of Sydney Banks. In 2008, he asked them to establish a school for practitioners and others who are seeking to experience a deeper understanding of the three principles as discovered and taught by Sydney Banks." It's a full-length movie of 100 minutes, and then they've interjected clips from Hawaii and from Long Beach. It's really, really beautiful. So that's how I prepared for today, was I enjoyed that yesterday. And that is available through the Three Principles Foundation. Again, the information is there in the book.
You know, Krista, one of the things that's really important about those free resources that are recorded for an individual who's, I think with Mariko, we used the phrase the lone duck.
Yes.
Side of the school system. You can have this really rich resource set of professional development just for yourself. And if you're lucky to be in an environment where there are folks that come together in a learning community at your school, then of course you can use them there. But either way, it's accessible. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And accessibility is really the key. I just think it's so important that it's easy for us to access some truth, and as I was saying at the beginning, to get ourselves back to square one and the big picture. So I have no idea what time it is, but
it's about 5 minutes to 11, so we have 35 minutes, and perhaps you might want to ask Barb to comment a bit about her book as a resource for folks.
Yes. Absolutely. And then we have one lesson. Do you think we have time to go through a lesson, Kathy?
We'll take time to do it. Yes, definitely.
Okay. So, Barb, I was hoping a couple things. I know you've used these materials yourself for many, many years. And also, Barb, I just love the essential curriculum, which really is helpful for people who are responsible, in a sense, for the culture of a school. So I wonder if you could say anything about how you like to use the materials, but also let us know about your book.
Okay, thank you. Am I unmuted?
You
Yes.
are.
Okay. So, hello, everybody. I've used these materials that Krista created in the 90s all through the years that I was in a classroom. I was a school principal, but I always made sure that I had time in the classroom every single day, because I felt it was important that a person who was a principal also had the feeling of what it was like to be in the classroom, because that's where it all happens. And a couple of things that have come up in what you were saying today. The most important thing of all, I believe, is living what you know. And that's what you said, Krista, that if the teacher and the principal are living what they know, then that's going to spill out. And having a curriculum that you can use is really the jumping off point. All of the stories that we have, and we have zillions of them, where we see some transformative thing happen that becomes the catalyst that moves us on to doing even more, is what moves us. As a principal, I think it's very simple. It's like what Sid said at the beginning in that little clip, that you keep it small. And to me, keeping it small means that the principal is there to create the nest. You create the cradle that holds the staff and keeps them in a place where it's filled with love and joy. That's it. End of story. And if you can do that, it creates the place where, instead of constantly putting out little fires all over the place, you're focusing on that big picture that Krista talked about, that's really tiny and small, that is the cradle. And from there, you create the atmosphere and the environment for teachers to be able to take this curriculum forward. And that's what I talk about in the little book that I wrote, which is called The Essential Curriculum. And it was really, when I wrote it, it was really for a young principal coming into a school and not really knowing what to do. And it is about all of those things that we have to know, and the forms we have to fill in, and all of the objectives that need to be met. But the most important thing of all is the underpinning of it, that piece which is essential, and creating that cradle where people feel safe to move forward. And that's for everybody, for the kids, for the staff, for the parents that come in. That's our main job. I know that in the beginning of doing this, there were no materials to hand out. And in the first, until Krista and Jeff wrote that curriculum in, what was it, 1990 or 91, something like that, I'd already been doing this in a school for 13, 14, 15 years. And we just had to rely on what came from inside. And so it was really living what we knew and using our knowledge, our inside knowledge, as our place to go forward. And like all those teachers you talked about, Kathy, that they didn't have a curriculum, and so they relied on what inside told them to do. And that was what I did until Krista's curriculum came along, and that gave me a little more guidance. And there was some wonderful pictures, and I think Krista's kids were the ones that did them at the time. And the illustrations were great. They were super to use with young kids. And now with what Jane and Krista have put together, it provides people a starting place. But that's what it is a starting place. And what they've provided is beautiful. I love the evaluations, especially that little part at the bottom that you pointed out, Kathy. All of the things that are there are places to begin. And then as people gain in their confidence, the sky's the limit. Many years ago, my school had an external accreditation where you did an internal one, and then the government sent a panel of 6 people from around the province to come in and examine how things were being done in your school. No curriculum at that time, except what I had used that Krista had put together all those years ago, and my own understanding. And when they left, they started their final report by saying, this school is filled with love and joy. And nothing could be better than that, because that creates the place where people move forward. And as you said at one point, Kathy, we can see what's happening in the world right now. And love and joy is what we all need to share with each other. And if we can find in ourselves that place where the health of the helper is key to what we bring forward in schools, it's going to make a difference. It is, as some of our colleagues have said, the one solution. It's there.
I want to make one point clear here to anyone that ever listens to this recording. We're not in any way trying to push or market or sell the curriculum or any of the books referenced, but we want school systems to change.
Yeah.
And in the long run, you will have an easier task whether you are outside of the school system trying to consult with the school or employed in the school system if you have something for the staff and you have something for the children. School systems run on stuff and things.
Yeah.
And so that's why we're pairing these two together. And I'll take this opportunity to just quickly flash 3 little books written a long time ago, but recently republished by Jane Tucker. It's the Insight Inspirations series. And I suggest those for part of the personal development as teachers are going through the process of teaching and sharing the principles, trying to make change happen in your schools. These are great nighttime reading.
Yes.
And
so, Krista, oh, please, go ahead, Barb.
And what we have done in putting forward this professional development series that we did, with my little book, with what Jane and Krista have written, we feel that we've created a package that is next to free that we can offer, that people can take forward, and it will provide an opportunity for people to work in schools and be able to make systems change. Because you're right, it's the systems change that needs to occur.
And some of you need professional development renewal hours. We figured out a way for you to be eligible to get 18 hours of professional development by participating in this webinar series. So follow up for details. Krista, do you have a lesson that you'd like to share with us, please?
Yes, and thank you, Barb. I just want to add that I'm living in the same community as Barb, people who work with her, children and adults, that they always have felt safe, loved, and ultimately felt heard, and that really helped the culture blossom. The story I chose is chapter 7. It's the last story. There are 8 chapters. The first chapter and the last chapter are do not have stories, but chapters 2 through 7 do. This one is called The Wheels of Learning Keep on Turning. And every lesson plan has, it says, learners will be able to show the following learning outcomes. And then it has, for every chapter, there is a big picture idea, something to really focus on and discuss with the children. What I found over these many years of doing this work is that given the opportunity to discuss these beautiful ideas and pieces of knowledge, is that the youth, the children and the youth discover what they know by articulating it. And they kind of sometimes look left and right and go, wow, I didn't know I knew that. It's just give them the opportunity to find what knowledge they have inside is so powerful. In this lesson plan, the big picture idea is a quote from Dear Liza. Sometimes it was only their thoughts that were making them unhappy. And if they could understand, it would help make them feel well. So that would be a discussion after the story. Also in there, it shows the purpose of the lesson. Here, for example, enhanced self-management, confidence, optimism, making the respectful choices about which thoughts to act on, based on well-being of self, recognizing family support, and then some reading, writing, and art goals. The approach is to provide learners opportunities to, in this case, gain awareness of resilience, the ability to navigate life, and secondly, to reflect on the power of thought to create ideas. The activities are always attached. In this one, it's art, discussion, poem writing, poem reciting, and reflective journal entry. The special resource is really fun. It's balloons. I'm not. I don't have a watch. I'm not like me. How much?
You'll be fine. If necessary, we'll extend a bit.
Okay, so I should read the story.
Please.
Amara's story. And then it says, predict what will be learned. Once there was a girl named Amara who loved life. She saw her world as a playground just waiting to be discovered. In the summer, she liked to sing and play all day. She would look up at the clouds and imagine things. She had fun looking for patterns in nature as she played. Amara loved that there was so much to learn, and she even learned to solve hard problems. Her wheels of learning were really turning. Life was easy for her. She felt joy in her life when she was learning with her friends and also when she was learning on her own. Amara knew people who wanted to teach her about life. They all had very different ideas. Her cousin was serious, and he thought that was the only way to be. He told Amara she needed to buckle down and be serious with her work. Amara's sister was often worried about running out of time. Hearing her sister worry, Amara started to think that was the way to be. Her brother said, think about yourself, put yourself first. Her friend said, think like this, act like that. As Amara started to believe what everyone was telling her, she did become serious. She did start to worry. She did start to think only about herself. She found herself thinking. She felt the wheels of learning slow down. She started to worry, am I doing this right? She felt unhappy. One day, Amara was outside with her mom playing with her baby brother who was in the kiddie pool. Amara would hold the rubber ducky under the water and then let it go. The baby started to giggle as the rubber ducky kept popping up in the water. Suddenly, Amara was filled with happy feelings once again. With the return of these feelings, Amara had an insight. Happy feelings can pop up at any time. She said, Mom, I just realized I can be happy. Just like the rubber ducky keeps popping up, my happiness keeps popping up. Amara looked into her mom's kind eyes as she said, yes, nice feelings are inside every one of us. When you make good use of your own common sense, you do feel good. When you listen to other people so much, you can get confused. Then it's best to let the mind clear. Her mom sang a little tune. My guide inside is helping me decide. So only if it's useful will I keep that thought alive. And she danced in a little circle. Now both the baby and Amara were giggling. Amara let her mind clear and was just quiet. She glanced at the clouds and then at her laughing little brother. She had happy feelings once again. She was excited that her wheels of learning keep on turning. Amara was grateful toward life. She understood she could trust her common sense. Amara whistled a happy tune and then sang out, my guide inside is helping me decide. So only if it's useful will I keep the thought alive. And then the picture is pattern in nature, dragonfly and the flowers. So after each story, there's what do you think? Let's talk about it. And I've put in the criteria right in the learner's part, so they know what they're striving for. What is an excellent sharing and discussion? Well, when you're in an excellent state of sharing, it's show respect, share, and look for the big picture. So it has a quote, sometimes it was only their thoughts that were making them unhappy, and if they could understand, it would help make them feel well. And then you say, how is this story like something you know? Think of a time you felt you noticed your wheels of learning really turning. And then in each one, it's like here, Amara knows, and then the bullet points of the key points re-emphasized. We know practice is our friend when we're learning, so there's a lot of opportunities to practice and really own these ideas. Being a reading teacher, it's very important for me to have the children build vocabulary. So with each lesson, there are power words for oomph. So there's the words there, the definition, and then an opportunity to write a journal entry. And again, it gives the criteria for writing an excellent journal entry. Use I, share your thoughts and feelings, show insight and connections. And then it invites you to comment on the big picture idea, and also guides you to use a couple of the power words in your reflection. The next page is about activities. Now this would be an English language arts lesson, may end there, or you may wish to extend it or have them extended at home. For the extension activities for this chapter, write a poem. The criteria are show depth of thought, be organized, use colorful language, create a mood. And then I've given some sample ideas. Throughout the years, we've collected beautiful poems written from these sample ideas. Thought is like a seed, thought is a gift. A thought alone has no life of its own. You choose which thought to use. Act on the good thoughts. And then it says, you know, publish the poem, decorate the border, display it, recite the poem, create a work of art, and then and details on that. And then lastly, each section has a have fun section. No evaluation, just having fun. I do this a lot with kids of all ages. They love it. You blow up a balloon and you just let the air out and have it, you know, squeak, hiss, and fizzle. And then how is this like you're thinking? Well, when you take your focus away, the thought just fizzles out. A thought alone has no life of its own. So hopefully it's light. It's there's some learning there that can be used for report cards, and has some fun. And again, Jane and I are really encouraging people to use their own creativity to create activities and extensions for this.
It's a little bit like getting a highway map or using a GPS.
Yes.
You're free to follow the directions or to veer off and then
Absolutely.
come back on course as you wish to. Are you ready for questions from people?
Absolutely, yes.
All right. I've noticed a number of people smiling and having various responses. You know to go to the bottom of your screen and raise your hand in the participant section. And I happen to be really good at spotting some people that I just sense have something to say. And Risa, if you don't mind, I'm going to call on you. So I have unmuted you. I know that you are doing something with the curriculum and you have a history. Can you offer a question or a comment?
Lovely.
Oh, sure. Let's see. My history, well, my parents knew Sid before I was born. So that was beneficial for me, obviously. Raised with the principles without really knowing them. You know, they didn't ever teach me. These are the 3 principles and this is the curriculum. My mom is not a teacher, Krista. So I guess the last like 3 years probably, I kind of realized what I wanted to do with my life. And started studying the principles more and taking different courses and just learning more about how I can share this with people as a career instead of just being my happy self and
Right.
people in that way without them realizing what hit them.
Right.
So I got Krista and Jane's book, and I'm on Salt Spring right now, and I live in Atlanta, and I forgot to bring the guide with me, but I've gotten a lot from it. I've taken notes, so I'm okay. But when I saw it, I thought, I have got a 9-year-old daughter and a 12-year-old son. And to me, this was like, you know, I'm a single parent. How can I infiltrate this into their little beings? And so I started thinking, I'm going to use this guide as a tool to have, I'm not a teacher, but a set sessions with kids. And what it ended up turning into is, in August, I'm going to do like a 4-week program with girls. Now my son doesn't get to participate because it ended up being all girls that have signed up for it, but we're going to do 2 days a week for an hour each time, and have like a month-long program using this curriculum, and just see how it goes. And hopefully it'll expand to boys as well, or maybe I'll keep it separate. And you know, I'm thinking about places I could hold bigger groups of kids, because I think there's about 6 or 7 at this time. So it's going to be a nice little group, and most of them know each other. And I've got actually a teenage girl who's going into 9th grade, who's going to be sort of my assistant.
Oh, beautiful.
I wanted her to be part of the group because she's really at that age where she's struggling, you know, with her own self-esteem, and just not really getting how life is working, and she's just really insecure. So I've worked with her a bit on her own, and she knew right away what I was doing. She's like, "You only want me to help you so I can learn." And I said, "Yeah." But we've talked about that. So do you see any problem with that? I mean, you'll benefit from it, you know. And the girls, all young girls, love.
Oh yeah.
Teenage girls, right?
Yes.
And they're all gonna love having her around, and you know, I'll benefit from just being able to learn from her learning, you know. So anyway, I'm excited about it, and Krista and Jane have helped me kind of come up with a little flyer too to help promote it. And yeah, I guess that's it. Anything
She
else?
has this beautiful professional flyer that's being distributed in her neighborhood this summer. It's amazing. Yeah. Okay, thank you. And I'm wondering, Deb Bell, if we might be able to call on you, and it takes me a minute to find you here. Are you under someone else's computer today? Let's see. Okay. Deb, I'm going to have you raise your hand later on. So at this point, is there someone that might, Brady has a comment. I will come to you. Thank you, Brady.
You bet. Hey, am I unmuted there, Kathy?
Definitely.
All right. Hey, a couple of things. First off, is it Riza or Riza who just spoke?
Risa.
Lisa. You know, I've raised 3 daughters of my own, and my youngest is 18 now, and I headed off to college, but I wanted to let you know, as well as the others, that we can't talk to our own kids enough about this, because the more we can get them in their own health, not only is parenting going to be easier, but their life and what they experience every day is going to be so much easier with all of the pressures that they experience in their school systems, with all the different images and isms and so forth. So keep talking to her. She is listening. And you know, my youngest is an active recruiter for me. She will go out with her friends who are in total turmoil, thinking about all kinds of poor choices, and will bring them over and say, "You need to talk to her, Dad." So it wants me to introduce these principles to the kids, and she has a good foundation herself, and she talks to them about it also. So your daughter is listening. As far as Krista and Jane, I just want to let you know I've been involved for the last couple of years trying to get my district administration to really bring the principals or health realization full-time in the district. For the longest time, they had the classes, teaching educators. One of the things that was really, really missing over the years was the curriculum, and you spent a lot of time talking about that today. And our district is looking at social emotional learning right now, and is at a point where they're making some decisions. And I sat on a committee this last spring and pushed really hard for this these principles to be kind of the framework for District 742, but there are some competing materials out there, and most district administrators like materials because it sets a path. It's something they can hand out. It's something they can check on. And you've provided those materials. And so now what you've armed me with, this is my military, all right? It's time to attack.
Yes.
And I'm going back to our district leadership, and I'm going to say, okay, so as we sit on the social emotional learning committee and then we talk about how we're going to roll this out and so forth, one of the neat things about it is that we already have our foot soldiers trained in our district, where there's a number of people throughout the district that already have experience, and they're trained and they've been teaching in their own methods in their districts and using it with their peers and so forth in the halls. And this just helps formalize it and can take this abstract, what is it, to something concrete. And so I just want to say thank you. And I've got another way of taking it forth and saying to them, this isn't new mainstream philosophy or psychology. It truly is rooted in the very core of what everyone should learn therapeutically before they go on to learn all those other diagnoses and so forth. And I just want to say thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Good luck.
You bet.
And Deb,
I can report back here in a while that we're using it in our district.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Deb Bell, you are muted.
I'm pretty excited about her curriculum, Chris's curriculum. We've been wanting to expand, having more teachers share the health realization in the classroom, and this is going to give us an opportunity to do that. Oh, it's just starting to hail outside. I'm sorry. But it's real exciting. The stories. Kids love stories,
Yes.
and whenever you have a story, it just pulls them in, and they get their attention is just enthralled with it. And I love the way that you put this together. It's really well done.
Thank you. I appreciate you looking at it and the support. Thank you.
I'm sorry that hail is so loud right now. It just started.
Oh, we can hear it almost.
Can you?
Hear you? Oh yeah. It sounds like golf ball size.
Well, we'll skip across the pond. Peter.
Oh yay.
Hi, hello, hi.
Good morning. I mean,
Hi,
good
how are you?
evening.
Yeah. It's 5:30 in the afternoon.
Yes. Yes.
That was lovely. I love what you shared today, Krista, because even if we took the sound away from and you were muted, you said it all in your face, really. That sense of love, though, that, you know, the children that you talked about, the children, I mean, some of the children that are our most challenging at school, I'd always say to children, to the staff, they are some of our vulnerable children.
Yes.
Because if you have a sense of vulnerability, then what do you want to do? Well, you want to help them, don't you? You want to, pick them up and cradle them. And I love what you said about that. It's been a really interesting journey, this has, for me, because I was very wedded to the thought that we have to be fresh in the moment, always. And so whatever I was doing with children needed to come up in the moment. And then I found that there were certain things that were coming up that seemed to be really helpful to children. Mm-hmm. And some metaphors and some little things that we did, putting stuff into a plastic bottle, putting dirt in the plastic bottle with some glitter and then some water and then shaking it up. And, those sorts of things. I'm thinking, actually, that's all right. and so then seeing the potential for a curriculum. I mean, in our country, we've been overloaded with government initiatives that have been downloaded to school. We've gone from, I started in school at 1975, and we had no materials for anything really. So everything you made up. And then we've gone to a complete opposite really, where there's total prescription over all sorts of things. And that creativity, that sense that people can see children new and fresh and connect with their wisdom with the child's wisdom and point them in the direction is under pressure here in the way the system is working. And so I just think this is great. I've got my foot in the door for 2 lots of trainings in September to start the school year off. One big primary school, so that's 4 to 11-year-olds with about 500 students, pupils, and then a smaller one with about 180. And so I'm definitely going to be going in armed with that, because I think, you know, we can talk about it, we can do an introduction, and we've got a few sessions lined up, but it's very, very helpful for people then to come away with something that's quite tangible. And I've forgotten the lady's name that was just saying beforehand, but children love stories, don't they?
Yes.
They love it.
Yes.
My grandchildren, my oldest grandchild is quite challenging in all sorts of ways, and she's a delightful girl, and but if I ever try and talk to her about your thinking, she says, "Oh, stop that, Grandad. I don't want to listen to that again." Yeah. However, I say to her, "Oh, do you want to have a story?" And then I could do stories. Stories are right. Yeah. So I think that's going to be, you know, I think it's going to be really, really helpful. And I loved the introduction that you've done to it today in terms of your thinking and how you've pulled it together. So thank you. I think it's going to be really helpful.
It's important to know that there is an elementary and a secondary curriculum both coming over time. Jane and Krista are already working on those. So more tools. And Sue Wolfram, if I could call on you for any responses. You have been sharing the principles in your work with children for years. What comes to mind today?
Well, the one thing that really comes to mind is, yes, number one, this curriculum is going to help a lot in pushing this forward in schools that, like you say, Kathy, need stuff. But the other stuff that schools need that's so frustrating is they want research-based. They want some sort of study that shows this is effective. And so, of course, my question again is there anything, do we have hard, fast research that we can bring and Brady can bring to show, see, this really is effective? And I think that's the problem with our jump into Mind Up and mindfulness, is because they've got the research. And what I've talked to you about, Kathy, is that the way I see the Mind Up program and mindfulness is it's wonderful, but this is the foundation that's missing. And I think we need to start with this as a foundation to build some of the Mind Up curriculum on. It's very similar and it would fit in beautifully, but I really think we need this piece as a foundation, but we don't have the evidence to support it to get the districts to believe in it.
And the good news and the bad news is that right here in this meeting today, we sit with the people who will be in a position to do the research. And I'm going to redefine research. It's documenting the results of what you do. Those 4 little snapshot measures that Krista included in her curriculum came from work that Brady Hughes was doing in St. Cloud, and he's talked about that on the webinar. Those 4 measures with just 4 children were enough for his building administrator to change his job responsibility so that he could bring the principles to more kids. And over time, we will solve this problem, but document, document, document. Barb is aiming in the direction of collecting the stories. And if you know of an amazing story, let us know, something you've done with children or staff members. In August, I'm very excited for you to meet Deb Bell, because she took us serious a long time ago and started making little video clips of children from 2nd and 3rd grade 10 years after they had been in her classes. So you'll see some narrative about what occurred. So,
and I just want to add one more piece to anyone who's teaching as a teacher. that the principles I found as I was working with students and co-teaching in the language arts program, that this is in every story. And if you are a teacher who knows this stuff, you can bring it up to the kids in every story that they read and say, do you see how this character, you know, it can be woven in throughout their day. I mean, that's what I love about it. And I think that's what's needed. So it's not just a one-shot lesson.
Right, absolutely. Good point. Important point. Yeah, the novels that are chosen for children to use that are approved all have an important message. And if we can amplify that with them and show them how you know, it relates to them and can benefit them, I think that's fabulous. Thank you for pointing that out. Absolutely. Even in math lessons, dare I say, there's lots of room for it.
Well, we have a tremendous amount of energy among us. I'm delighted that you're all here. I want to thank Jane Tucker for joining us today and being present. And Krista, if you would like to have the final word, perhaps you wish to make a comment, and I understand you have a clip for us.
Yes. Kathy, you mentioned about our other curriculums, and I want to say that our future steps are, Jane and I are already working on the teen version, which is very exciting, really, really fun to work, to think of working with teenagers with My Guidance Side. And just a small anecdote about that, I've just connected via Skype with a Salt Spring lad who was my student when he was 9 years old. He's now he's now attending college in Torquay, Devon, England, and working on his second master's degree for digital media. And when I connected him and asked him I wanted to hire him as a consultant for all the wonderful tech ideas we're going to put in the teen version, he was like, those things I learned at age 9 are still the heart of my work today, as he works on his second master's degree. It was just a wonderful, heartwarming anecdote of how this knowledge stays with us our lifelong, and in fact gets stronger and helps us and serves us even more as we turn into adults. So I think in psychology they talk about change agents, and I think I see all of us who are interested in children and youth and interested in sharing knowledge about how life works and about the 3 principles. We can be these change agents. It's very optimistic, very hopeful. And that would be my conclusion. I want to say the clip we're going to end with, even the title of it does something for me, Quiet Mind. So we'll let Sydney Banks have the last word. It's just, it's under 3 minutes, a clip. And I just want to thank everybody for joining us. We really had a wonderful time. Thanks.
It's amazing, our thoughts get us into trouble, and it's our thoughts that get us out of trouble. And if you're in trouble with your thoughts, there's no sense of digesting them over and over and over again. You forget them. You forgive yourself. You have to learn to forgive yourself and other people. And unless you forgive, you'll go through life in a hellhole, to put it bluntly. And if you look with logic, you'll see what I'm talking about is common sense. When a person is suffering because of their past, to go back into that past again and create more suffering, it doesn't make common sense. What that person needs is love and understanding to get over the trauma of the past. And if you give them love and understanding and the knowledge that all it is a memory carried through time via thought, then there's the healing process is taking place right there. When I say forget the past, it doesn't mean to say you actually forget the past. A lot of my past is beautiful memories. There's nothing wrong with having a beautiful memory, A beautiful memory is a healthy memory. There's nothing wrong with that. It's when you have unhealthy memories that are creating your mental problem now. You drop those unhealthy ones. And the healthy ones, you still realize it's just a memory, but it's a beautiful memory. That's quite different. And another important thing to remember, each day in our life, we have probably thousands and thousands of thoughts going through our head. Some are good, some are bad. Like some are positive, some are negative. Now this is where your free will comes in. You have the free will to use whichever thoughts you want to. That's quite different. You know, if you have a bad thought, you don't always act on it. It'd be a terrible life if everybody acted on their bad thoughts. You just ignore them and you act on the good thoughts.